So with that, I'll look for a roll call from my clerk.
Your Worship and members, all members are present with the exception of Councillor Compton, Councillor Dolan, Councillor Miskimmins, alternate Councillor Staffan Walma is in attendance, Councillor Sandu, alternate Councillor Jonathan Scott is in attendance, Councillor Van Stavern and alternate Councillor John Broderick is in attendance.
Thank you. Does anybody have to leave early today? Rather short agenda anyway, so I think we'll be okay. So look for an approval of the agenda. Councillor Measures.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Good morning. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Smith that the agenda for the February 14th, 2023 meeting of County Council be approved.
Okay, any questions on the agenda? All in favor? That is carried. Do I have a disclosure of pecuniary interest by any member of council? Not seeing any. So presentations and deputations, we have none. On the consent agenda, if Councillor Burkett, I believe you have the motion.
Thank you. Good morning, Your Worship. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Anderson, that the Council Communications and Proclamations January 31st, 2023 to February 13th, 2023 have been given due consideration be received.
Thank you. So questions or comments? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So the adoption of the minutes from the committee reports, Deputy Warden Coughlin.
My apologies, Warden. It's not pulling up at the moment. Just trying to find it here. No.
Deputy Warden, I can probably assist.
Thank you.
Moved by Deputy Warden Coughlin. Did you have a seconder?
Jules.
Councillor Laux, that the following joint council and committee of the whole minutes be confirmed and adopted. Joint Council and Committee of the Whole minutes, January 31st, 2023, and Joint Council and Committee of the Whole confidential minutes, January 31st.
Okay, any questions or comments on the minutes? All in favor? That is carried. Presentations, the Committee of the Whole report, we have none. As you remember, we had a combined council meeting last time, which is why the agenda is so light today. Presentations for special committee reports, none, and presentations for county officers report, none. Motions to which notices have been previously given, we have none. Do I have any notices of motion? So I have none. Closed session, I have none. So consideration of bills. Councillor Norcross.
Thank you. Good morning, Your Worship. Resolution that bill number 6995 be enacted as a bylaw of the County of Simcoe, moved by myself, seconded by alternate Councillor Walma.
Okay, questions on the bylaw? All in favor? That is carried. So we'll look for announcements. I guess I don't need to tell anybody that It Starts is set up out in the hallway now, and that's the campaign by using a selfie frame set up by staff to promote and campaign the social media will be made available in the atrium following the meeting today. So members are encouraged to get out there, get your slogan, and get your picture taken. So that it's not set up yet, but it will be set up shortly, will it? It is set up now, good. And I don't believe I have to tell anybody it's Valentine's Day, and I listened to the radio on the way in, and when your spouse says they don't want something, they're lying. They actually do want something, and that was well discussed on the radio station that I listened to on the way in, so happy Valentine's Day to everybody. Any other announcements? If not, I'll look for the confirmatory bylaw. Councillor Norcross.
Thank you, Your Worship. Resolution that bill number 6996 be enacted as bylaw of the County of Simcoe, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Measures, please.
All in favor? That was carried. And I guess I just need the adjournment now. So I need a mover, moved by Deputy Warden, second by Councillor Fowler, that we now adjourn at, do you have the time, 9:08 a.m. All in favor? That's carried. As my uncle would say, hardly worth shaving for. So we will reconvene in what, 5 minutes, and we'll get our chairs up here, and we'll invite our separated city councillors down.
Please rise.
Okay, I'll call us back to order, and I'll look for a roll call from my clerk.
Your worship and members, I will call a roll for the city reps.
Thank you, Doug.
Aurelia Councillor Durnford. Aurelia Councillor Fallis.
Present.
Barrie Councillor Hamilton.
Present.
Aurelia Mayor McIsaac.
Present.
Barrie Councillor McGeezy.
Present.
Barrie Mayor Nuttall.
Present.
Barrie Councillor Riepma.
Present.
And your worship, you have your quorum.
Thank you. I'll look for an approval of the agenda with councillor measures.
Good morning, Your Worship. Resolution that the agenda of the February 14th, 2023 meeting of the Committee of the Whole of Council be approved. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Smith.
Okay, any questions or comments on the agenda? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Do I have a disclosure of pecuniary interest by any member of council? Aurelia, Councillor Fallis.
Thanks. Through the chair, I did inform the clerks prior. I will have to declare a conflict on presentation 4.2. Oh, apologies, 4.2 and item corresponding report 6.1. As my partner is employed by an agency that's partnering in the project. I also will need to declare a conflict specifically as it pertains to report 7.2, and I look for clerk's direction when we get to that juncture, and it's regarding the same conflict, the agencies being considered for grant funding. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other declarations? Nope. So we'll move into our presentation and delegations. So I believe we have the Simcoe County Federation of Agriculture here today. Oh, there's Dave Ritchie, and you can introduce your team when you get here, Dave. It's good to see you in the chambers again.
Your Worship, councillors, staff, ladies and gentlemen, as the warden has just said, my name is Dave Ritchie. I'm the current president of the Simcoe County Federation of. I also have been chairing the Ag Liaison Committee for the county for the last several years. With me this morning, I brought some of our team. Colin Elliott, first vice president of the Simcoe County Federation. Paul Maurice, director for York Simcoe Peel, OFA, Ontario Federation of Agriculture, and behind him is Leah Ems, who's our member service rep and whatnot, the big help. So what is the Simcoe County Federation? Well, we're an advocacy group. We have 1,560 members, and we represent every part of Simcoe County. We have 10 directors, and we sponsor or mentor the 4-H clubs, north and south. We do the food banks. Actually, we've got the second round of checks coming out as we speak. We're going to be a little over $10,000 donated to the rural food banks. We try to focus on some of the smaller ones that have been, not affiliated, and so we've been doing that for several years, and we're just a tad over $10,000 to those, I believe, 8 that we're donating to here this time around. When COVID hit several years ago, we had to change gears. We couldn't do some of our advocacy work like Keep Kids Safe and Farmer Comes to Town. So we commissioned a videographer, and I'm going to play it here in a minute. We're going to doing different sectors of agriculture and whatnot. The thing about Simcoe is we've got it all. It doesn't matter what you talk about, where you talk about it, we have it. And agriculture in Simcoe County is business, big business. We have 1,846 registered farms within the county, within our borders. We cultivate, manage, mentors, stewardship some 500,000 acres. And once again, we grow it all. Whether it's vegetables in the south, whether it's fruit and vegetables, corn, bean, wheat, livestock, we have it. The big thing here and the numbers you need to remember is on that 500,000 acres, we generate $1.1 billion of GDP in the boundaries of Simcoe County. The province of Ontario only has 47 billion, and Simcoe has 1.1 of that. 1 in 8 jobs rolls back to agriculture. So agriculture is a big part of what we do in this county. So I'm going to play the video and that we've commissioned. I'm trying. One more. Here we go.
This is a farm that we bought at just north of Wyvale. There's 130 acres here and 250 across on the other side of the road. We rotate the crops every year, corn, soybeans, and wheat. It helps with the disease resistance. The weed control is better. You try to get away with as little a spray as possible.
So her dad is QB, so her dad's a quarterback. And her mom is 16B, who is Rita. We affectionately call her Rita, so this one's called Baby Rita. Her number's 4J, and she was born on January 1st. Come on, girls! Come see me! Hello, pretty girls!
There's always things to be learned, and a great resource to work with your associations, people in the community that are in your industry and in other industries.
So as a horticultural farmer here in Simcoe County, one of the most important programs is the Seasonal Agricultural Worker Program. These workers you see behind me have anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15 years experience coming back to my farm.
When we buy land, you want the sandy loam land, but you also want it near a reliable water source. So whether it be a river or a stream nearby. The Simcoe County area has been good to us.
This machine is multifunctional. It does a little bit of everything. In 3 passes, it will mow, spray, fertilize. It has the ability to prune trees, fumigate, cut Christmas trees.
We really appreciate that people take the time and the effort to track down their favorite maple syrup supplier, their favorite vegetable supplier, and go to the farm or go to the farmer's market. So it just goes around and around. People support us, we support local businesses, and away we go.
We have the luxury of having Georgian Bay not too far from us, and that provides us with a little bit more moisture and a little bit more heat too as well. We have excellent land here. There's good amount of topsoil and good soil too, and it's an excellent place to farm.
I'm a farmer right down to my core. There's no doubt about it. I love farming and I love the cows and the crop and all the rest of it. That can really inspire and motivate you to get up in the morning.
Something that I'd like to mention too, I passed over, is we also have a bursary program for continuing education for kids that's going on to university. We supply students that's going on further agriculture. Also, a couple of years in the height of COVID, we donated $10,000 to the Simcoe County nursing homes so the staff could have outdoor furniture. So I'd like to comment on the video a little bit. The last person we saw here is Johnny Miller. Johnny and his family started this on-farm dairy about 15 plus years ago, and the idea was returnable glass bottles. and with a lot of hard work, it took off. And so now Johnny's family and them, they are producing a whole bunch of stuff. Actually, his ice cream that he's been doing for the last couple of years, the Cashtown Crunch, is to die for, honestly. But there's also another family, the DeHaan family in South Simcoe, also on-farm dairy. And they too have taken over and done quite a thing on a family farm, processing milk on the property. Now, the reason why I mention these two people is they've opened their doors for an open house, and they have in the summer months, and they started that pre-COVID. And when they got going with this, it just exploded. And both of them see 6,000 people show up to their doorstep on these open houses. So I guess the third one is John Williams, who is part of the maple syrup industry. He's the secretary treasurer for the province, but he also lives around the corner. He's part of the Sweetwater harvest that we have up in our end of the township. Him and his wife, when the butter tart festival started, they were producing over 1,000 butter tarts that they took and sold on the front street to support the butter tart festival. And John and his family, or his wife and staff, also are big players in the Elmville Maple Syrup Festival, which has become now probably one of the largest in the province, with somewhere between 180 or 90 vendors. And John is part of that. And the reason why I mention these three people is these are people in your community, and they populate our committees. They're part of this, whether it be Source Water, like I am, or conservation authorities, or the Curling Club, or the Lions Club. These are what makes our community and our rural Simcoe County work. So with agriculture, there's also, like any other industry, there's stresses and challenges. And we have a farmer wellness program and a helpline for farm families, 724. So with that, I'd like to make one more comment, and that's to you, Your Worship. Several months ago, in your inaugural, you challenged council to come to you with a position for Bill 23. Bold statement. We agree with it. It's honest, whatnot. And we agree that we have to, as a municipality or a group, come together and form a position, a Made in Simcoe plan, to go forward to the province so that we can work, live, and farm in the years to come, Simcoe County. So with that, I thank you all for your time and your interest, and it's yours, Your Worship.
Thank you, Dave. Now, first thing I'll ask, can we all get a copy of that video, if you can provide to the clerks, and you can circulate all of council members?
Yes, I believe our office administrator, Nicole, was here. She has it online. And we did these videos basically so that when we couldn't do the Farmer Comes to Town, we had these so the teachers could take it and plug in and use it as a course up on. So it's well available to everybody. Glad to be able to supply it.
Perfect, thank you. Any questions?
One more thing, we have, thanks to Leah and staff, we put together some grab bags in the Earl Elliott room downstairs. So they're there for the taking. There's another comment I'd like to make. Colin's dad was Earl Elliott, and if you're in the Elliott room, that was dedicated after Colin's dad. Paul's dad was warden back in the day. I guess Earl was warden when this place was open, right, Colin? Yep. And Paul's dad was warden back in 62 and 63, and he was inducted into the Agricultural Hall of Fame along with Earl last fall by Ag Minister Lisa Thompson. And so you're in good company, Your Worship.
Lots of history here.
You betcha.
But there wouldn't be a bag of corn seed in that grab bag, would there? It's got rather
I didn't bring enough
pricey.
money, Doug.
Yeah. Any questions for Dave? Okay, so with that, what I'll look for is a motion to receive. I don't have a motion in front of me here. Don't need one? Oh, don't need one. Okay. Thanks again, Dave, and welcome back. So next I've got Raising the Roof and Adrian Dingle. Welcome, Adrian.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for having me here today. Warden, council, staff, it's my pleasure to be here today representing Raising the Roof and the new affordable redevelopment project at 25 Peter Street in Orillia. Raising the Roof has a program called Reside, and Reside is really the primary homelessness prevention tool that we have at our charity. It pairs the development of new affordable rental housing with the development of trades training opportunities. The Reside program started in 2019, but we've already undertaken some existing public partnerships with the City of Toronto, the Region of Peel, the City of Greater Sudbury. Our builds prioritize partnerships with nonprofit organizations called social enterprise contractors. These are groups that you might be familiar with, like community builders in Simcoe County. These organizations are groups that prioritize trades training as a product of the construction that they complete. And we work with them almost exclusively on our construction projects in order to provide new trades training opportunities for people with barriers to employment in your communities. Over 80% of their graduates go on to long-term career opportunities in construction. Although Raising the Roof has been working on this project since 2020, and we're a national charity, we have some local partners. Community Builders, I already mentioned, you might be familiar with them as their training facility is just down the road. They're a local social enterprise contracting organization. Raising the Roof typically partners with a housing provider organization once we complete a project and move towards occupancy. In this instance, we're working with Redwood Park Communities. They're an ideal service delivery provider, and they have hands-on experience creating new affordable assets and managing these buildings as supportive rental housing. The property includes an existing two-story commercial building in downtown Orillia at 25 Peter Street. It was previously owned by the federal government. A Canada Post distribution center is the current ground floor tenant, and the building was identified by CMHC as an ideal candidate for redevelopment to affordable housing through their Federal Lands Initiative program. Raising the Roof won an RFP through the Federal Lands Initiative in 2020, and we've been working to develop the property ever since. The existing second story will be renovated to include 20 new units of rental housing, and a third story addition with a further 20 units will be created on top of this. The units are going to be mostly bachelor's and one-bedroom units, and the entire building is going to exceed CMHC's standards for sustainability, affordability, and accessibility. The existing post office will remain as the anchor tenant, and the unique basement space is still available for lease at this point. Raising the Roof has purchased the property, but we've been working alongside our partners, CMHC and Orillia's staff, to create a viable development concept since 2020. The current zone permits the development concept as of right, and the project is only subject to site plan approvals and building permits in order to proceed to construction. By March 1st, we'll have engineer drawings and a complete construction budget available, but the total project costs are expected to be in the neighborhood of $15 million. Raising the Roof has already received over $2 million of funding and project-specific funding from various sources, including CMHC's Federal Lands Initiative, the City of Orillia, and our national network of private foundations. At the moment, we are currently seeking additional funding so that we can deliver even deeper levels of support and affordability to the people that are going to be living in this building. This is in line with our mission primarily as a homelessness awareness and prevention charity. The application window for the third round of CMHC's Rapid Housing Initiative is currently open and closes on March 15th. Raising the Roof is planning to make an application very soon. The program funds proponents who can move swiftly and deliver projects in a timely manner, providing contributions of up to 95% of total capital costs of a development. For 25 Peter, this represents a potential federal capital investment of over $10 million in Simcoe County. Proponents are prioritized according to physical design parameters, expediency, and availability of external financial contributions. Excluding the financial contributions, Raising the Roof scores quite high, with a projected 61 out of a possible 65 points. This is not a coincidence. We've been working very closely with CMHC over the past year to create a project that scores high and can be completed within their very demanding timelines. The remaining 55 possible points are awarded based on the extent of confirmed external operating funding and the proportion of capital funding required from CMHC to contribute to complete the project. In essence, the lower the capital requirement from CMHC, the higher our score would be. An important note on the funding, CMHC has indicated that applicants submitting projects that do not have confirmed operating subsidies for the purposes of support delivery will not be considered for the Rapid Housing Initiative. So with this in mind, Raising the Roof has been working closely with council staff to create a tailored support delivery budget over the past few months, and a corresponding funding contribution from the County of Simcoe to complement our application to the Rapid Housing Initiative. The true cost of providing these necessary supports for low-income women and women and children at this location is approximately $350,000 annually. Our initial proposal to county staff was for the full amount of these services, but in an attempt to salvage some opportunity to apply to Rapid Housing by securing an operating agreement of any size, our partner Redwood Park Communities has agreed to absorb some of the labor costs included in the budget into their existing organizational capacity that's spread across Simcoe County. The result is a minimum $200,000 annual need for external funding to support the operations of this building. The maximum 25 points for operating funded are awarded to projects that could demonstrate at least 20 years of external operating funding. Raising the Roof has also discussed with staff an 11-year operating term, and this would reduce the total financial request, again trying to come to a bare minimum operating agreement permitting us to apply to Rapid Housing. There are 3 levels of county financial support and the social outcomes associated with each presented in the chart that you see before you here. The competitive funding package gives Raising the Roof the best chance of success at securing Rapid Housing funding and delivering a supportive housing project in Simcoe County. The second package represents the minimum contribution from the county that would still allow us to apply to Rapid Housing, but with less likelihood of approval by CMHC as a result of a loss of prioritization points for a decreased duration of operating funding and a lack of capital contribution. Both of these funding packages result in 40 new units of deeply affordable supportive housing, where the building average rent would be below 65% of average market rent, that would be dedicated primarily to women and children. There would be an extensive suite of wraparound supports provided by Redwood Park Communities, and all of this would take place on an expedited project timeline, resulting in building occupancy by July of 2024. Without any county funding, our project will not be eligible for submission to the Rapid Housing Initiative, and will be forced to pursue traditional financing and a significant capital campaign in order to complete our project, but with reduced and delayed community impacts. In this instance, there will be fewer and more expensive affordable units. The rent roll may include market units to support the mortgage. There will be very limited or no supports available at the building, and construction training and occupancy will be delayed significantly. If unsuccessful under this round of Rapid Housing, it's very likely that Raising the Roof will approach the county within the next several months to design another potentially more costly funding package that does not leverage federal funding to achieve our goals. After presenting our funding request to county staff, Raising the Roof has received direction from staff that they cannot recommend for council to approve any of our funding requests in any amount. I agree that a fair and transparent, this is based on the grounds that there is no existing policy available to moderate the various funding requests that are presented to staff on a regular basis. I agree that a fair and transparent process is crucial to the effective allocation of county funding, but the lack of such a policy shouldn't be a valid reason to dismiss what could be a massively impactful project. The Rapid Housing Initiative rewards partners who can work together to quickly deliver deeply affordable supportive units. In order for your community to benefit from the potential injection of federal capital associated with our project, our request has to be considered immediately and a confirmation of funding made available by no later than March 15th. As a result of this imposing timeline, I must urge council to look beyond staff's initial input regarding selection procedure policy and evaluate social impact and potential for federal funding associated with this project as a standalone opportunity for tremendous community benefit. I will admit this is a very ambitious project. Our ability to execute it certainly represents a valid concern for council members. However, I suggest that any risk to the county would be effectively mitigated by making any contribution agreements contingent on Raising the Roof's receipt of Rapid Housing Initiative funding. I can assure you today that our building is well designed, but rather than taking my word on it, I suggest that Council rely on the fact that they would not issue a single dollar in support of this project until extensive technical review has been conducted by independent quantity surveyors, the CMHC Review Board for Rapid Housing Initiative, not to mention the City of Aurelia's planning, engineering, and building departments through our site plan approvals process. Achieving occupancy by July 2024 is very aggressive, and we'll need to proceed at full pace to receive all of the necessary approvals and complete our construction by next summer. But we are fully confident that we can adhere to this deadline. In the event that the project is delayed, a precedent has been set by Rapid Housing Initiative Rounds 1 and 2, where projects that are unable to hit their timelines are still able to draw on CMHC funds to complete construction. It would be the reputation of raising the roof that would be on the line, not the county's funding dollars. I will end with this. 25 Peter Street represents a turnkey opportunity to prevent homelessness in your communities. The conditional nature of the proposed contribution agreements limits Council's risk massively. And if for some reason we are unsuccessful in receiving Rapid Housing Initiative funding or completing the project for any reason, nothing would be lost to your constituents other than the opportunities for the potential community impact associated with this project. To me, this opportunity is even more attractive because any contribution that's made by county today would be matched and perhaps even doubled by federal capital. If the creation of new supportive housing units and trades training opportunities accomplishes the goals of this council, I have a hard time believing this project is not an effective use of your funds. By committing to the minimum 11-year operating contribution today, you can have a good chance of saving some of the lives of the most vulnerable community members in Simcoe County. Any additional duration and capital funding only increases the odds of success for our partnership in any application going forward to CMHC. Thank you very much for your time and consideration. I know that this is a lot of information, so I'm very happy to take some time to answer your questions now. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have any questions from the floor? Deputy Warden.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, as many members of Council know, as I've been making many phone calls, I was very surprised to see that this wasn't being supported by the county, because I do believe that an initiative like this, in the capacity that it does hold, will make a huge impact in our northern communities. My question is, without the matched funding or the federal funding, how many units would be at the deeply affordable or attainable? And if the funding is provided, how many additional units would that bring?
Through you, Warden. Thank you for the question, Deputy Warden. And I'll just revert back to this slide here. I believe your question is a comparison of the different units that would be available in the various funding scenarios here. Under both the competitive and the minimum contributions from the Simcoe County, all 40 units would be made available at affordable rental rates, and the building average would be below 65% of average market rent. In the instance where there's no funding available from the county to support our application to Rapid Housing Initiative, we're going to be forced to explore all opportunities for project financing, including a mortgage, including market rental units into the rent roll for this project. In that instance, it's more difficult to approach exactly what the total number of affordable units would be, but I can tell you that we are held as an organization to a minimum of creating 24 affordable units as per the definitions of our agreement with CMHC's Federal Lands Initiative. Those units have to be maintained at rents below 80% of average market rent, but based on the extreme range of construction costs, it's likely that we would have to hold those units at 80% of average market rent and create units that would be above average market rent, potentially at 120% for the remaining 16 units in the building. That's why you can see in the far right there, the average affordability of the building would be close to what market rent is, just the relationship between units that are being rented above market rent and those that would be mandated for us to maintain at 80%.
Okay. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to our guest, great presentation. However, I do have a couple of questions from a financial standpoint, and forgive me if I've missed something, but if you could go back a slide or two, I think it had talked. You had talked a little bit about a budget of $15 million. So $15 million divided by 40 units, because we don't know about the basement at this point, is about $375,000 per unit. And if the average unit is 350 to 750 square feet, the average is $550. So that's about $682 a square foot. And that's where I'm stuck. I have no idea how we are possibly projecting that this is going to be affordable housing if it's costing us $682 a foot to renovate and build this product. And then at the end here, we talked about some could possibly end up being, depending on funding, at 120% of market. Well, we can understand why if it's $682 a foot. So I'm all for affordable housing, and I'm all about doing everything we can for our most vulnerable people. But I've talked in this House before about the cost per square foot to build buildings. And I'm sorry, some of the most luxurious homes in our area don't cost $682 a foot. I'm struggling to figure that out, and maybe you can help me with that.
Absolutely. Through you, Warden, to the councillor from Wasaga Beach. In our experience as an affordable housing developer, the average cost to create a unit across Canada is somewhere between $350,000 and $400,000. The unprecedented times that have faced development and construction in Canada over the last couple of years have combined to result in what is a pretty inflated construction cost and total development cost. Now, that's not including some projects that would be able to take advantage of modular or extremely small unit sizes like tiny homes. But for your average new build or retrofit project, I think that we're within the range of what I would anticipate for a development across Canada. Beyond that, with respect to the funding, my main requirement here today and what we're looking for to receive from the county is to focus the county's attention on operating funding. CMHC's Rapid Housing Initiative looks to fund capital projects, and our amount, I believe if you take, I can't remember what their exact figures are, but if you take the total number of units that the Rapid Housing Initiative is intending to fund and divide it by the total amount of money that they have to spend in this round of the Rapid Housing Initiative, I believe that the result is about $350,000 that you would get per unit, including all the development costs that would be eligible for subsidy under their capital funding program. We would be slightly above that, but I think that mostly we would be attributing that to the strong contingencies that I've included in the $15 million mark. I had hoped to have concise construction budgets to be able to share with you in exact detail, but rather than talking myself into a corner about what the actual amount of the project is going to be, I wanted to build in a good, healthy contingency there. So with respect to the county's interest in this project, we're looking for operating funding to fund the supportive services that are going to be on site. That's things like housing workers, case workers who are going to work directly with people who need mental health support at the building, and all kinds of additional costs and things that are going to go towards supporting people and making sure they can be successful. CMHC's concern is the capital funding on this project. This is, of course, the arrangement under our application to the Rapid Housing Initiative, and could be a different picture if we were approaching the county in some time for a combination capital and operating agreement. I will add that any capital that could be put towards this project in addition to an operating request would increase our potential chances of selection under rapid housing. But primarily our focus today is on the operations to support supportive housing at the building.
Supplementary, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks for that explanation. And I hear you and I understand completely. So if we're looking at funding, annual funding for support, I guess I come back to the cost per square unit. And if we're building housing at $682 a square foot, I'm not so sure how we're going to get the rental to an affordable housing amount, if you will, and therefore are we going to need the support services that are required. We can go around and around, I'm sure. I'm just really struggling with those numbers. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, I had Councillor Norcross and then Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, Your Worship, could somebody from county staff refresh my memory on why the county is not supporting this funding model that's been put before us today, please?
Nina.
Through you, Your Word, and thank you, Councillor, for the question. First and foremost, it's a very valuable application and process, and we recognize that. There's 3 or 4 factors that went into our decision making. There's 9 criteria points required by CMHC to get approval, and the approval is not partial or full, it's pass-fail. So if you don't meet any one of those 9, you don't get the funding. The stream that they're being that you would apply for is the project stream. So for round 3 of our HI, it's $1 billion available for the project stream across Canada. Based on the proportionality that Simcoe County received in its city stream, we received 1.7% of the funding through CMHC for the city stream. So similarly, we're looking at the most we probably see based on proportionality would be somewhere around 17 million. So putting forward a proposal asking for 10 or 15 million at a unit cost of 375,000, while it looks good, like it may score strong, it comes down to the operational commitment. So having an 11-year operational commitment out of a 20-year requirement by CMHC, is a commitment for us that draws concern, because what happens in year 21? We're a system service manager that's responsible to maintain affordability and end chronic homelessness. So in year 21, the county would then need to rework an agreement or a partnership agreement again to give affordability or ensure operational investment in it so that it goes into perpetuity. And to that point, in a 20-year-old building's operational cost may require that $351,000 operating cost to rise considerably. So for us, it's the sustainability and perpetuity was a factor. The average unit cost right now, CMHC's first and second round of RHI has been averaging around $333,000 overall, and in the city streams around $250,000. So for us, the $375,000 per unit, if they get full funding, which we're hoping, certainly we want all of our partners to get funded, and we need more affordable housing. It's just the likelihood's a little bit of a high-risk proposition for the county at this time. However, and some of our conversations with staff in January is once we see the construction budget and the pro forma for operating in March, we're certainly welcoming the opportunity to work together and develop an application with sustainability built into it in perpetuity for another future round if that meets the timeline. The struggle here is the timeline for development is really tight, 18 months starting July 1st to occupation. So if we don't hit those targets, it's another risk factor for us as well. So those are the reasons.
Supplementary?
No, just want to say thank you, Your Worship.
All right. Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for your presentation. I just have a couple of things that I'd just like to see if maybe a bit of more clarification. In your report, it says that competitive is 20 years and minimum is 11. We talk about 21 that if we didn't have the funds for the 21st year, we would have to do it. But what happens between the 11th year and up to the 9 years for a business plan on how you expect to pay that? It's just that it says competitive and minimum, and I just wondered why that wording, what your take is on that, please.
Absolutely, through you, Your Worship. This is an extremely important question. Our original ask to staff was for the full 20 years, but in an attempt to mitigate what seems to be a lack of funds from staff to go toward projects like this, we've been kind of chipped away and whittled down to fewer years and a smaller operating amount, even forcing some of our partners to shoulder some of the labor responsibilities associated with delivering these services. 11 years represents a smaller gross sum, but you're right. When 2035 rolls around, we would be in a similar situation as we are today, and we would be staring down the barrel of two different paths. One would be to come back to council, come back to the county staff and arrange a similar operating agreement. The other would be to come up with the most thoughtful and the most compassionate way to transition the building to long-term affordability without supports. I just want to make a point and clarify something that was said by staff previously. The building operations, without the necessity to have a mortgage, because we would be eligible for funding with rapid housing if we were successful, means that there's a net income coming from the residential operations of the building of over $40,000 annually, even at the deeply affordable rents that we're providing below 65% of average market rent. The only thing that would be lost as a result of an expiry of an existing operating agreement would be the level of support that we could provide to our tenants. I just want to make it very clear. These are very discrete elements of our building. building operations is not something that staff is concerned with for this, because there is, and we have demonstrated it in our initial pro formas, that there is an over $35,000 net income to the building after utilities, insurance, property tax, and everything else from the deeply affordable rents. But you're right, it's important to consider what happens in year 11, and that's part of the reason that I would suggest, and why we originally took the position, the 20 years maximum points is the best way for raising the roof to have an opportunity to receive the funding from the Rapid Housing Initiative and make it such that we don't end up back here in 2035 to renegotiate.
Supplementary, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess maybe then I need to ask, if this wasn't for some reason successful, because we know it's needed, and I know that you have the land, so that's a great start, but if it wasn't, could I ask through staff if there's other avenues that they can go in the future? Maybe if I could have that answered, please.
Go ahead, Mina.
Through you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor, for the question. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a couple of things our housing services team is working on. We're developing this year our next 10-year affordable homelessness and housing strategy, which will work on an approach to develop partnerships for creating more affordable housing, and those going through a system-wide kind of approach, allowing everyone to bid and put forward their best proposal so that we can score them objectively and see which is the best fit for our current needs. Homelessness and housing is a moving target in terms of needs. While this focuses on the most vulnerable, and this is why we like the application and the initiative, it's what we need today. Our 10-year plan has to be able to predict and adapt to the needs of the county as a whole. And secondly, that approach of a more open and transparent application allows us to be able to address things as based on a system need rather than like a first come first serve application process, which is what we're kind of doing in this ad hoc approach right now. So yeah, so moving forward, we do know that CMHC has indicated, there are plans for future opportunities through the National Housing Strategy, and we would certainly want to be lined up and ready for those with those proposals in hand, and then go and support a partnership submission of sorts. So.
Go ahead.
Sorry, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for those answers, and I just wish you all the best here today. And I just wanted to, the reason for the question is I don't want this to fall through the cracks if it doesn't.
Thank you very much.
So Barry Mayor Nuttall, go ahead, Alex.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question on how you fund it. Is there any portion of this that gets associated with debt, and is that where the CMHC piece would fall in, or is it actual funding?
Through you, Your Worship, the actual mechanism for the CMHC Rapid Housing Initiative funding is something called a forgivable loan. There would be zero interest, and it would be forgiven on a straight line basis over the duration of affordability of the project. It's funny because it kind of walks the line between being a capital grant and being a loan, although it doesn't have the typical requirements of debt servicing that we would see from your average lender. Nonetheless, it does encumber the property and prohibits our opportunity to take further leverage on top of the existing loan or forgivable loan from the Rapid Housing Initiative. So in a sense, it's a grant. In a sense, it's a loan. It behaves like both, but it does preclude our ability to take debt financing should we be accepting funding from the Rapid Housing Initiative.
Supplementary.
Yes, please. Thank you. The fact that you're taking CMHC would then stop you from taking any bank financing to do these projects. And what does CMHC? What portion will they fund out of this?
Through you, they would be funding up to 95% of project. So depending on if there's a capital contribution available from county, which would increase our odds of success, making it conditional on the receipt of funds from the Rapid Housing Initiative, their contribution could be anywhere from 10 to the necessary $13 million. I would love to be able to provide detailed exact numbers to you, but as you can imagine, our consultants are scrambling right now to put together a detailed design and have it quoted in the next couple of weeks before the application deadline. All that being said, it's in the neighborhood of 10 to $13 million would be their anticipated contribution, depending on what county elects to do today.
And so the 95% is the program created so that if you qualify, you get up to 95%, or do they then determine in some sort of subcategories of their approvals process that, okay, this one's going to qualify for 50, that one's going to qualify for 25, and that one's going to qualify for 95?
It's what you ask for, and the balancing act is creating a proposal that has enough points associated with it, and you do earn points by CMHC bringing less capital to the project. So I believe if they bring only 60% of the total capital costs associated with the development, that's where you earn maximum points. If they bring 75%, it's a decreasing scale of how many prioritization points you can earn. So it's our decision as the proponent where we want to strike, and based on what kind of alternative capital funding opportunities we can negotiate in the interim.
Okay, Deputy Warden Coghlan.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to staff. It was spoken of that there's an ad hoc that we want to wait and develop a formula so that we can accept and better go through the applications as they come forward, so that it's not on a first come, first serve. My question then would be, how have we at the county supported every initiative that's come forward to date? It would be through a similar process as to what's in front of us today?
Mina, go ahead.
Through you, Your Worship. So for the directly developed projects, those were done by different rounds of submissions from different townships and municipalities submitting their proposal. So those are the ones that we're developing directly, similar to the ones like Bradford and Aurelia and those that are in flight right now. Prior to that, the provincial government used to fund us through a program called IAH and IAH Extension through 2014 till about 2019. And in those ones, they were done by proposal, where we would score based on application for different crafts. Those are much smaller developments and much smaller projects, historically speaking, and often done by similar organizations like nonprofits and cooperatives that were social housing providers or wanting to come into the social housing service delivery, and we would be funding through application and review. So for Rapid Housing Initiative, we've never created a proposal process that allows us to use their 9 criteria points and match those 9 criteria points. One of them does define the demographic of clientele they're looking for, like most vulnerable. It's like women, seniors, Indigenous, and youth. So again, similarly, what we want to do is review our current homelessness and housing needs, and then design our proposal based on scoring, based on our local needs that meet the federal criteria.
Supplementary, go ahead.
Thank you. And then, again, I see this as an opportunity missed, not moving forward with this. And in the resolution later today, it does speak to that should application-based RHI 13 funding be approved by CMHC. So my question then is, if we were to support this in principle moving forward, and should Raising the Roof receive the federal funding, you had spoken earlier about there being a risk to the county. So what type of risk? If they don't get the funding, we're not out any money. So what type of risk are we talking?
Through you, Your Worship. Thank you for the question, Deputy Warden. So there's a couple of risks. The first risk is that if a granting is approved, for how much is the question. So if they do put in an application based, let's say, on our option B model, that would mean that the project's coming in at what we believe to be 15 million. We haven't seen the budget. But if costs do run over, and it's in flight, meaning that in order to complete on time and secure the funding, and ensure that the allocation does get completed through the federal government's grant, we need to complete the project in 18 months. So if there's any cost overruns, and we're sponsoring the program, we would be, in my estimation, be the ones responsible for those cost overruns, unless there's some sort of certain or guarantee that it'd be funded by the partner or the project developer, which is not us in this case.
So we're drifting a little bit into the item later on the agenda. I just want to stick with questions for the gentleman that's here doing the deputation, and then we'll have our full discussion when we get to item 6.1 at that time over the financing. So carry on, Deputy Warden.
And thank you. I just wanted clarification then that I will have the opportunity to speak to this project at 6.1. Thank you.
The only question I had, you said that the focus was bachelor pads, but then later you said your focus was on single mothers. I kind of need, which is it?
I'll just clarify for you, Warden. Bachelor is a term that we use to describe an actual unit type.
Yes.
I think it'd be fun to house bachelors, but at the same time...
No, I realize it's a single unit, though, but that wouldn't be sufficient for a single mother. You would need a second bedroom.
So it's primarily one bedrooms with some bachelors, and the bachelors would be available for women, and the one bedrooms would be available for women and women with young children.
Okay, I got you now. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. I guess I have a quick question on what your company, you showed us a house at the very beginning. What kind of scope of work have you been able to accomplish in the past? Anything of this size?
It's a great question. The program started just in 2019. That initial site that you saw is an old heritage church that we purchased, or actually that we lease from the TRCA. Between 2019 and 2021, the scope of these projects has been primarily below 5 units. I've been brought on, my previous experiences as a residential condominium developer. I kind of have 5 years as a development manager and an acquisitions manager. And my scope of work is to create an opportunity for Raising the Roof to tackle multi-residential projects. This project is one of the first opportunities for us to go to multi-residential. We have almost 200 units across Canada under development currently that are constitute building sizes up to 100 units and up to 80 units. But this really is our first shot as an organization, despite my own career experience, taking on a more multi-residential opportunity.
Supplementary, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess, what is your backup plan if the funding isn't available or you don't achieve that through the county? You must have other avenues that you can approach.
We do, and primarily it would be accessing funding through CMHC's National Housing Co-Investment Fund. The thing about this fund is it's a terrific way to use a loan, but it is a loan-based project. So it necessitates holding a mortgage, servicing the debt, and we wouldn't be able to provide the depth of affordability that we discussed in our Rapid Housing Initiative operating concept. So with that in mind, we do have a backup plan, but it just has a different set of outcomes for the operations. We wouldn't be housing women and children most likely, and the units would be at a higher rent, but still affordable.
Okay, alternate councillor Walma.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to General Manager Fayez-Baguette. The part of the concerns you mentioned were that there's a limited amount of money in the pot, and our allocation will be a certain percentage of that. If this was the only project, I think that this would be a great thing to move forward with. But we're banking on. Are there other projects coming forward? And I guess staff would be the first ones to know. Have you had discussions with other initiatives? Because at the end of the day, this council wants to see the most bang for its buck with that Rapid Housing Initiative funding and our contributions as well. So, to you.
Through
yes,
you,
go ahead.
Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor, for the question. So back to my comment. What we're doing is we've done the calculation based on likelihood. So for the Simcoe County was allocated 8.6 million out of 500 million. So at 1.75 or 1.72% of the overall available money, that's what CMHC identified for this area and community would be an adequate amount to continue on some of our projects. So similarly, out of a $1 billion pool, at that same kind of percentage point, it's about 17 million. You take that amount based on the average unit cost that they have been funding, which is about, again, like I said, between from 250 to 333,000, depending if you're a municipality or a nonprofit. It still shows like this would be a high, above average per unit cost at that $17 million mark, which you're looking to, I think, as proposal, 13 million out of that 17 in one project for the whole community. Similarly, we have plans, to answer your question, to put in for $1 million to develop 6 units. So that's about at $170,000 cost for Indigenous families living in our single-family home properties that we own and operate under full subsidy. And then thirdly, there was another proposal in the report as well, bidding for 55 or 44 million out of 55 million for their project as well. So when you'd have 3 bidding for a smaller pot of money and at a higher unit cost, the likelihood, based on previous decisions CMHC has done in the earlier 2 rounds of rapid rehousing, it's a factor. And then furthermore, again, and I want to emphasize this, we see absolute value in this, like the social enterprise component of it, the supportive housing service component of it, the vulnerable sector it's going to serve. We just feel that the timeline of seeing a budget on March 1st for a March 15th submission in order to finish in an 18-month development in a new area or a new project is very ambitious. And if there's any cost overruns or any delays, the risk starts to rise. So those are the factors of doing it. However, we are not opposed, and I'll be clear on this, to sit down and meet and even work up until March 15th, see that there is the best bid submitted, and we sure will advise and support in whichever way we can. But we do look and keep our eyes on another round happening in 2023 that might meet the timelines a little bit better and might qualify. I'm just not sure about their, Raising the Roof wants to start and their timeline doesn't match, unfortunately, at this time.
Thank you.
You had a comment, Adrian?
Yeah, I would just like an opportunity to refute some of that. I think that the reason that we've suggested a contingent contribution agreement is such that it's an opportunity for the county to take a bit of a risk with us. And it's a risk at the outset, but it's not a financial risk and it's not an opportunity risk. What it means is that the county would be essentially relying on the technical reviews associated with CMHC. Like Deputy Warden said previously, if we don't get the funding from the Rapid Housing Initiative, we wouldn't be looking to the county to come forward with the same operating agreement that we've outlined here. As much as I would love to lock the county in for something that we could put forward to other projects or to this project in another concept, that's not fair and it doesn't make sense because we're dealing with a very different operating pro forma in terms of who we're serving and the rents that we're creating. In terms of cost overruns and timelines, I think that I managed this earlier in my comments. These are on the head of Raising the Roof and not the county. We believe that this is achievable. We have confirmation from our contractors. I believe our budget was provided to staff in the context of our initial proposals. But of course, we're reaching that point where we can have a fixed price contract with our constructor. That fixed price contract is going to be reached before July 1st, which is the point at which we need to have a final executed agreement with the Rapid Housing Initiative. I think that it's a very simple equation in that if you take an opportunity to give us this opportunity, if you give us this opportunity to apply to Rapid Housing with the operating funding, Raising the Roof, CMHC, Aurelia's planning, building, and engineering departments will come up with the details. And I think that it's difficult for the county to probably put the trust into all of these different faculties in order to execute a project that you don't have a lot of control over. But at the same time, Rapid Housing Initiative is the new way that CMHC is looking to fund projects. And it's forcing communities, municipalities, partners, developers, and counties like this to take really quick decisions outside of their typical policy in order to be able to take advantage of the tremendous opportunity that's provided through potentially more than $10 million of federal funding coming to the project. I really do believe that the opportunity for us to provide this conditional agreement completely negates the county's risk. It's basically giving us a chance. And if the chance doesn't come to fruition, there's no financial expenditure on the part of the county.
Okay, I've got Barrie, Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, and through you, Warden. I just want to be crystal clear in my understanding of your ask today of county, and it's to secure annual operating funding in direct support of the wraparound services that you spoke of, which I fully support. I just wonder, as an alternative, have you looked at partnerships with existing agencies, mental health agencies, community support services that are already funded to provide those types of services for the community, as opposed to incorporating these additional costs as part of your overall operating?
Through you, that's a terrific question, and I'll tell you that in our experience communicating with CMHC, the reason that they've made the ability to apply contingent on the presence of external operating funds is because they're looking for that big target to be able to rely on for that operating funding. In terms of a 20-year agreement, there are very few nonprofit organizations or existing support organizations within Aurelia that have the purview and the size necessary in order to justify being able to sign on the dotted line for a 20-year agreement. To some extent, the county is really the only fish big enough in in the county to be able to warrant CMHC's consideration as a viable body for providing that 20-year commitment. And that's been the direction of CMHC, but it's a creative solution that you put forward and something that we've already worked on to some extent.
Okay, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I apologize if I missed this earlier. But does Raising the Roof own the building, or are there timelines committed to the building if there's funding not available, or you're not successful in the grant?
It's my absolute joy to say this out loud. We own the building. And it's been quite a journey since 2020 to orchestrate the sale. But as of November 2022, we're the property owner and the landlord to the existing Canada Post there.
So you have a long-term lease set up with Canada Post?
That's correct.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions for the presenter? Okay. Oh, yes, I see one. Go ahead. Councillor Hammond.
Thank you, Warden. Are the costs higher because you're doing a renovation project here as opposed to building new?
Through you.
Yes.
One of the goals of the CMHC's Federal Lands Initiative is that the building would be preserved to allow for Canada Post operations to be unperturbed and for them to retain their existing space rather than relocating. So a renovation project was a necessity of the original application and RFP process. Based on that, there are some significant structural needs, as you can imagine, turning such a building into a third-story addition. I'll say that we're in good stead in terms of our structural components because the building was built in the 1950s with a Cold War era mindset. The basement is literally and figuratively a bomb shelter. I think until almost maybe 18 months ago, there was a whole set of cots and water storage tanks and stuff like that down there. So we're well set from a structural point of view. It is probably on par with what I would expect to pay for a new build. And I think that there's been some discussion today around construction costs and what our ask to the Rapid Housing Initiative is going to be. And I just want to make sure that everybody understands, in our experience and in the experience of builders and developers across Canada, our project is on par on a per unit basis in terms of creating a total capital cost or a total development cost per unit. And our application cost to Rapid Housing on a per unit basis is likely to be in the neighborhood of $330,000 to $350,000 because we already have some existing contributions, and our construction budget is likely to be refined down from $15 million to something below that. But thank you for your question.
Any other questions? Supplementary, and then Councillor Gordon.
How does the post office rent figure into the costs of the operating costs?
Yes, through you. The post office produces net income. Unfortunately, CMHC will not consider that net income as a potential source for money that could go towards service delivery. While we do have an existing 5-year lease with Canada Post, they still see it as a potential liability in the future should there be vacancies, should the market change, should commercial rentals like this space be less desirable in 20, 40, 50 years from now. Their perspective is that it's for building operation as opposed to support delivery.
Okay.
Another one? Go ahead.
Sorry, I have a question for staff. I totally understood the idea of coming up with a process where others could be bidding, including, I guess, our presenter. Under that model, when do you see potential awards being given, and when would building start? Because I have to say, what I find attractive about this proposal is we could actually have some housing a year and a half from now.
Mina.
Thank you.
Through your worship, thank you for the question, Councillor. Our goal would be to come with a 10-year affordable housing and homelessness strategy to council sometime in the early fall, which would align pretty close to probably the next round of RHI that'd be available. And then certainly what we could do as part of that strategy is build kind of that call for proposals as an early indicator point to that strategy, so that it gives enough time for partner agencies and interested developers to bid prior to even an RHI being announced, so that we're ready to go with submissions to applications well ahead of the announcement from the federal government's next round.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Gordon.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Learning a lot from it. The sort of aggressive timeline, that concept to keys, you know, it's such a quick turnaround. I think that's exactly the kind of sort of aggressive build that the province is looking for and urging us to do. And I think some of the legislation we've been seeing has been prodding us along to find initiatives exactly like this. However, notwithstanding that, the realities of committing to long-term funding like that and some of the risks that we're being cautioned about from our staff, that does kind of hang as a cloud. I'm wondering, have you considered any, perhaps a compromise in your proposal rather than the extra capital involved of adding the third story and the third floor? What about using the existing built form and simply occupying the space that you have and then working on the bomb shelter in the basement and making it feel a little more welcoming rather than the capital that would be required to put a third floor on there and whatever geotechnical things are involved? I'm sure it's quite complicated. Have you considered that as like option B, as a compromise to try and get funding and maybe have a few less units in round one?
Go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's important, you know, we're taking a swing for the fences here in terms of trying to create the highest and best use possible at the site with the 40 units that we know that we can create there. I think that there are opportunities for us to fall back and consider other opportunities for the way that we design the building. But at the moment, our design is sound. The capital is in the range of what we expect to pay per unit to develop a site like this. And we would like to take our best shot to create the 40 units that we think that we can. The basement has been explored for all kinds of things, like creating a tunnel under Peter Street to get cars under there for parking, to everything from that to a roller rink. But one of the things that can't be supported in the basement is a residential use as a result of what I anticipate are meter-thick walls and lack of windows down there. We can't actually create units in the basement space despite wanting to, you know, create additional housing. That's what we'd love to do. So the current concept falls within what Aurelia would support in terms of height and density, and we're limited only by the structural capacity of the building. But I do think that you're onto something. You know, if we're in the same position 6 months from now, we're not sure what to do, that's something that we could consider in order to provide 20 units very quickly. But our goal is still to do the best that we can with the space we have.
Okay, Councillor Burkett.
Thank you through your worship, and thank you for the presentation. Is this a nonprofit organization that's purchased the building? Is that how it works?
Yes, Raising the Roof is a national charity and nonprofit.
Okay, so the other question, so the tenants that you have on the main floor, so you have a signed lease, was it for 5 years?
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Adrian? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great presentation. Thank you very much. So now I will get ready. Before I hand the chair off, you'll notice I'm short a chair today because Lynn was at the funeral, and for the first time in the 16 years I've been here, there's no items under corporate services. I don't think I've ever seen that. So with that, I'll turn the chair over to Councillor Leduc. Go ahead, Chairman.
Thank you, Warden, and appreciate that. It was a great conversation and great presentation. So we'll move into Human Services consent agenda. Before I read the motion, I was going to ask our General Manager Jane Sinclair to comment on this. It's a great news story, so I thought I'd ask her to put a comment on the floor, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This is a very good news story. The County of Simcoe Paramedic Services participated in a research study over a 4-year period from 2018 to 22 regarding cardiac arrest procedures using a defibrillator. There were 3 different methods used, the traditional method and then a second method where it's a different placement of the defibrillator pads on the chest, and the third, which is a double sequential. I won't get lost in the technical, but it's actually using 2 different defibrillators in a sequencing. As a result, and we participated with 5 other, I think there was over 4,000 paramedics involved in the study, 6.6 million population, 41 potential cardiac arrest patients annually. And the results are quite overwhelming, 2 to 3 times the success rate for these new methodologies in cardiac arrest defibrillation use. So we are very pleased to have been part of this study to see these results. Our paramedic services are continuing to apply these 2 new types of methods in cardiac arrest response, and we look forward to, with the results now being published, we anticipate there will be at some point in future a change to the standards regarding cardiac arrest treatment. So very pleased to provide this update to County Council.
Thank you, General Manager Sinclair. Any comments or concerns with the consent item? Any further comments? Councillor Follis.
Thanks. Through the chair, and I'm not a medical professional, so I was just kind of trying to get an overarching understanding of everything. I was curious because from the sounds of it, the method that was recommended was to have 2 defibrillators within the vehicle, and I'm curious, are there any plans immediately to try to address that, and what usually is the cost per defibrillator? Thanks.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will defer this question to our new Director-in-Chief, Sarah Mills, regarding the equipment. Thank you.
Are we keeping the Are we keeping the 2 defibrillators in here? Okay. Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. This is my first time doing this, so I'm navigating. So I guess, can you, just to clarify the question, are you wondering if we're having 2 defibrillators per vehicle and what the cost is?
Thanks. Through the chair. Basically, that's the question. Are there any plans to change what we have in ambulances currently? Thanks.
So currently, we are only keeping we only have 1 defibrillator per ambulance. We send in another ambulance in to support that double sequential. As of right now, we haven't really got into the discussions. It is a big budgetary ask. It would be double the amount of defibrillators that we have, so we really haven't gone down that avenue. But I mean, depending on what the standard is, and it would also depend on ministry funding as well. So I hope that answers your question.
Through you, Mr. Chair, supplemental. So during the 4 years, we have not required to put a second defibrillator in our ambulances. We have been able to deploy, as Chief Mills had indicated. So at this point in time, and it's been very successful, we don't anticipate in the near future that we'll need a second in the each of the ambulances. I will also mention we were supported through our local fire services as well. So we have a number of fire services. I think we have 8 at this point in time that are part of our quality care program. And so they also participated and are part of the success story as well. And so they would come to the scene with defibrillators in their trucks as well. So it's been a great partnership, this trial.
Follow up?
Thanks. Through the chair, I do appreciate the information, and just from the sounds of it, and I hadn't considered the possibility of a second vehicle being on site. Do we usually expect, and again, I'm just kind of new to the whole experience here around reviewing this type of material, but usually in these types of emergency situations, would we expect more than 1 vehicle with a defibrillator to be on site? Thanks.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we're getting into some of the more technical, and I really prefer to consult with the team to find out all of the nuances regarding when a second vehicle is deployed for cardiac arrest. In some instances, prior to the research, that would be the case if there's assistance needed in transporting to the hospital, but I would like to take that offline and bring back information for you. Thank you.
Yeah, the good news stories here is a pilot, there's a study, and it actually has some benefits to it. So that's the general outcome of it. All right, seeing no further concerns, I need a mover and a seconder for the consent agenda. Moved by Councillor Fowler, seconded by Councillor Fryer, that the following consent item, having been given due consideration, be received. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Moving into Human Services, Social Housing, we have 6.1, item 6.1, I'll read the recommendation. No, actually, I'll ask for comments or concerns on this 6.1. And we had a great discussion earlier from raising the roof. So if there's any further comments or concerns, Deputy Warden Coghlan.
Thank you. And through you, Chair Leduc, I would like to propose an amendment, but I guess I would wait for it to be tabled.
Okay, so we will table the motion first. And then ask for the amendment?
Through the chair, I always encourage a full round of debates and discussions, so as that may formulate your recommendation. So if you can hear how the room feels about the staff recommendation, and then work from that point.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. From Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Chair. Just something that I would like to mention or just have input on is when Adrian did their project and a question came up about the post office paying, they pay, but they can't use it on the application, but that's still funding that's coming in. Plus on the bottom floor, there should still be funding coming in, which should help a project. I just wanted to be clear on that, if that's what I understand, that they couldn't use it for their application, but there is still money funneling in, which I wasn't aware of before. Thank you.
Yeah, he didn't mention what Canada Post was leasing the building out for, but I assume it's a very minimal amount of money if they've leased the building to raising the roof. Follow up?
I would, if Adrian's in the House, I would not want to assume it's nothing much, but I would rather have clarification.
Okay.
Thank you.
That satisfies your concern. Great. Further comments or questions? Councillor Scott. And then I've got Mayor Nuttall next.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for the report and for some of the pieces that are in here. I want to speak about two in particular. It's obviously no secret that we're facing affordable housing challenges throughout the county, and in Bradford, where we're rapidly urbanizing, we have some unique needs within the county. So the need for social housing has only grown, and we're very pleased that the county's affordable housing project on Simcoe Road in my ward is finally under construction. The 50 units for seniors and families this project will create are much needed, and the project's actually part of the first phase of our revitalization of the community center lands that it's occurring on. Over the next half decade, that will be transformed into an 18-acre campus, including the housing project, a future town hall, a rec center, and our central park for our downtown. So that means that the town, having donated the land to the county, is kicking off this revitalization that will be a huge benefit for our overall downtown revitalization, as well as providing the affordable housing. So I want to acknowledge and thank the federal government for the $8.6 million in funding that's mentioned in this report secured for the project, and of course the county staff who worked on the application. The town donated the land, the county's building the project, the federal government is helping fund it. So it's three levels of government working together. And I always like when people from Newfoundland or Red Deer help finance things in my ward. I'd also just note that the federal government also contributed $5.3 million towards the cost of a social services project just up the street to transform an old public school that we acquired from the public school board into a community hub and food bank. So putting those two projects together, we're really seeing how it all comes together. But I do want to ask the manager about the item in this report that speaks to Loft, which is also just up the street on Berry Street. Loft is a very well-regarded social services provider. They're in a bit of a similar situation, though unique compared to what we've been discussing with Raise the Roof. Their project will double the number of assisted living facilities for seniors with income and other challenges in our town. And again, the town's actually donated the land that will be used to secure their redevelopment on land that actually currently houses the food bank. So you can see how it all comes together when the dominoes fall in place nicely. So I understand the staff recommendation that the county doesn't want to necessarily per se be the proponent of the project, but I'm hoping, and I've mentioned this to the warden already this morning, there might be some sort of other step we could take to formally endorse the project, whether that's a letter of support from the warden to the minister and CMHC, or some other type of support short of being the proponent. And I understand our mayor, in his role as mayor, not chair, is arranging a meeting with Loft as the proponent. So I'll wrap up there, but there's some really good pieces of news here, and I'm hoping the manager can speak in particular to the Loft portion.
Through the chair.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for the question and comments. You know, certainly we agree with all the exciting social investment happening in the town of Bradford. You know, and while we're trying to develop ourselves and come come in on time, you know, this is certainly an opportunity LOFT presented, similar to the presentation from Raising the Roof. As nonprofit or socially focused providers that want to develop and create more affordable housing, which is always welcomed. And again, we again love the proposal. We've seen LOFT's work in other jurisdictions and know that their level of senior service care is incredible and very highly sought after. So we are welcoming a further meeting with them to discuss further how we can leverage those services and opportunities, maybe even in the development that's coming up now, and how we could support them and advise them on their own application. Similarly, though, $44 million out of a $55 million build to create 100 units, but replacing existing 58 units. So it's really 42 net new. Again, the unit per price based on that budget is somewhere around the ballpark of $500,000 per unit. The large amount of what would be proposed in the city stream, or if it was proposed in its own project stream, would be way higher than the proportionality expected to be given to this area. And similarly, the very ambitious timelines of 18 months to develop were all factors. They do meet all the other criteria. Again, they're serving a high vulnerable stake, lots of affordable units. Their sustainability model is sound in perpetuity, meaning keeping the affordability and operating costs without asking for that investment from the county. So here that request wasn't asking for capital contribution. It's just asking for a lot in a very short period of time. So again, we're going to sit and meet, have further discussions to see how we could, again, as you suggested, endorse or support or advise on their own application, or support even the town in a city stream approach as well.
Okay, thank you. And just supplemental, I appreciate your response, but I don't think we want to be doing CMHC's evaluation of our Simcoe County projects for them. If they want to find what they consider to be boxes ticked or boxes that aren't ticked, that's up to them. I think our job, short of being the county as the proponent, is to lobby and to have whatever approach we need, especially on this one because they're not asking for funding. I understand Raise the Roof is asking for funding, but there should be an interim measure of an endorsement from the county and a full court press to secure CMHC and the ministry supporting these projects, short of actually becoming the proponent. But thank you again for the response.
Yes, and thank you for bringing that forward, Councillor Scott. Even though the county is a housing supplier for social housing in our community, in our county, we all have an obligation to help provide that services, and Bradford will step up when it comes to hopefully helping the LOFT. So, Mary, sorry.
Nuttall, it's all good.
Yes, Nuttall. I had a tooth removed yesterday, so it's slipping.
Sounds good. Well, I had a new cast put on yesterday, so we were both seeing healthcare professionals. Just a few things in terms of the CMHC funding. Is there a finite amount that's allocated based on geographic areas?
Through the chair, thanks for the question, Councillor Nuttall. So the National Housing Strategy was a $40 billion investment by the federal government over 10 years, and we're in year 6, I think 6 or entering year 7 of that 10-year time period. CMHC was given the authority to allocate some of that $40 billion, specifically the amounts to create new affordable housing through development. The Rapid Housing Initiative was kind of initiated to fast track when CMHC fell behind on some of the targets they were meeting, and that kind of was launched during the pandemic. In fact, it was an opportunity to create more. The finite amount is $1 billion right now that we know of in the what they call the project stream, meaning everyone can submit in that stream, whether you're a nonprofit, a private developer, or even a municipality. And or there was a separated stream of $500 million, and that was for just municipalities to submit in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is it okay if I follow up? Continue? Yes. So It sounds like there is a finite, and I think you answered my second question, which was municipal governments can also be part of that process.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct, Councillor. The municipalities can bid in either of those two streams.
If I may
follow up, yep.
The social housing that's being proposed right now, totaling about $200 million, would it fall under this same umbrella, like the stuff that's being proposed for Barrie, Aurelia, and I think it's Midland, Bradford. Maybe, or Bradford, sorry.
Through the chair, yes. So any of those projects we would not be precluded for submitting for any of those projects as long as they meet the 9 criteria points. So similarly, the same standard of risk that we're applying for raising the roof and loft would apply to us too. Can we finish a build in 18 months? Can we meet the affordability criteria, the energy level service criteria, the population demographic criteria, and so on and so forth? But yes, we can submit.
Thank you.
Great questions, and I think the big one here when we look at this is it's $1 billion going right across the country, and we want to make sure that we get our share of it if we can without getting in there too much and not getting anything. So, you want to comment further?
Just one point of clarification, sorry, through you, the chair. Councillor Nuttall, it is worth to mention in the report we are applying $8.6 million of that $500 million pot that we received as a county to the Bradford project. That's what one of the recommendations was. So that is an example. The reason why we're able to do that because we're already in the ground, and starting July 1st, we're going to hit the mark of the 18 months till January 2025. So that's an example of how we've made one fly through the process.
I'll go back to Barry Nuttall.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I guess my concern is that, you know, folks come here with the best of intentions, and we certainly want to empower those in the community. But in some ways, we are kind of competing with others as well. And when you say $8.6 million, I say 2.15, because that's the City of Barrie's contribution. So when you get 8.6, I save 2.15. That's just how it translates. So I guess what I would be looking for, first of all, is that we first and foremost put those projects at the forefront of anything that we're considering as all of the grander conversations with community partners are taking place, because that's where it's going to have the greatest impact on the taxpayers of the City of Barrie.
And the taxpayers throughout the Simcoe County. That's the object there, and I agree with you on that. Councillor Cox.
Yeah, I would just like staff to comment on what the effect of Bill 23 is on this project.
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor, for the question. So currently, part of I believe the project you're referring to is the Bradford project that was referred in the report. Part of that, the funding model was relying on revenues from development charges in the area of around $6.5 million. So given that Bill 23's impact is looking like we will not have that revenue to include in the funding of the project, this is where we saw that the 8.6 received from the Rapid Housing Initiative would plug that hole and help with the funding model. So that's why we're making this recommendation, because the project uniquely fits the timelines and it meets all the criteria required by RHI, as well as it's a direct need. If we were not to apply it, certainly we would have to come up and figure out a way to fund that delta, and that's why this was a good opportunity to take.
Thank you. Further supplementing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, supplemental, and that was the indication of your information in the financial and resource implications, right? In the report, sorry.
John Manager?
Through you, Chair.
On page 6, yeah.
Yes, that's
okay.
correct.
Thank you.
Any further Councillor from Aurelia.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the manager. I want to clarify, please, what you feel to be the level of risk to the county with the Raising the Roof project. I understand your concern with the continued operating funding after the 11-year period runs out. What I'm not understanding is the perception of risk due to cost overruns and perhaps timeline challenges. My understanding from the presentation was that the county would not be assuming any of that risk, that would be on the developer and on their partners, and that they're looking at a fixed cost contract with the contractors. So could you clarify what you feel to be the risk with any potential cost overruns and time overruns, please? And thank you.
Through the chair. Similar to our own experience with the two projects we're delivering right now and the future project we're planning to deliver, we've seen an incredible increase in cost runs. So even if you are creating a pro forma and a budget in January, which is when we, end of January is when we engaged and met with the team from Raising the Roof. By March, you're probably looking at a different financial reality. So we believe just to deliver very quickly a full development from permits to occupancy in 18 months, there will be a significant investment in how you develop. So again, the cost overrun was a significant concern for us. Secondarily, if Reaching Home decides to fund less than the requested amount, there's a capital gap as well. And if you're already shovel in the ground during that 18 months, we're unsure, and again, this isn't to say that we can't resolve these concerns with further discussions with Raising the Roof and with staff, but from our preliminary discussions that we were just unsure of the specific details. And I believe at the beginning of the presentation, March 1st is the fully formed kind of development budget. So when we were discussing in January 31st to make a decision on the support and to grant the funding in perpetuity. So we don't see it as an 11-year commitment. We see it as a lifetime commitment because we want to maintain affordability in those units beyond RHI's criteria. So for us, it was those two factors, but certainly, like I said, we're willing to continue engaging and trying to see how this can work, and getting a little bit more information to understand if there is guarantees or assurances that cost overruns won't be the responsibility of the county, and it's operationally sustainable and affordable in perpetuity. Those are factors we consider as well.
Supplementary.
Thank you, and thank you for that thorough explanation. I guess I'm not understanding how there would be any potential for the county to be responsible for cost overruns when the organization is asking for operating funding, not for capital funding to build the project, but perhaps that's my own misunderstanding.
Chair Marjorie.
Through the chair, and I apologize if I'm not articulating correctly. Like based on the 15 million on budget plan, there is no risk. If there is additional costs that they have to incur and they're contributing to those costs, will they need more than 11 years of operating funding on our side? Are they financially viable on our side? Is the question we have to look at. So as projects get more expensive, two things can happen. You can raise the revenue by increasing rent on units, or you can ask for more subsidy from the county. So I think that's just an experience of seeing nonprofits develop through our previous programs provincially through IAH and IAH extensions, where oftentimes performance on day one don't equal month 18 or year 20 or year 21.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that was clearly stated that, once you establish the social housing program, what do we do in year 21? We have to, as the county, have to pick up that 351,000 as operating costs. So it's an operating ask. It's difficult. So I know, sir, you want to say something, but you've had your opportunity at the deputation, so we'll leave it at that. And So, next question from Councillor Fryer.
Thank you, Chair. In the report, and you've explained some of this additionally, you talk about the reduction of impact of loss in the case of the 8.6 million. In the case of the Midland portion, the 1,016,000, is there any benefit or estimated benefit to help with the impact of Bill 23 in that project?
General Manager.
Apologize, Chair. Could you repeat the second part of the question? I couldn't.
In the report, you speak about the 8.6 million, and you refer to the reduction of impact of loss of the development charges per Bill 23. In the explanation in regards to the $1 million for Midland, there's no reference to that. I just wondered if there was any estimated benefit to that.
Through the chair, thank you for the question, Councillor. So those are two separate projects. The RHA money that the county received was 8.6 million. That meets the 18-month criteria. The county is planning to put in the project stream for the 1 million for the 6 single-family homes to create 6 more units within those homes. And that's just a separate project that we feel we can hit the 18-month criteria. We're asking for $1 million or the equivalent of $170,000 per unit. So the reason why we believe this one's feasible and achievable within the timeline is because we would be just creating in-suite units in each of the 6 homes. The value proposition here is that in those single-family homes, we often have households who have watched their kids grow up and leave the household, but they're still attached to that home for the affordability, and there's no single one-bedroom unit available for them to transfer out of to make that home available for another family who's waiting on the wait list. So this is why we're proposing, and we believe it would be a compelling application. And, you know, again, we're utilizing our land, our lifetime subsidy in perpetuity, which is the deepest subsidy, RGI, and it's an opportunity to also renovate and refresh 6 aging single-family homes and keep them in the stock and doubling the unit count.
Okay, thank you. Further questions or comments? Councillor Ripma.
Thank you, Chair. And just following up on the Bill 23 question, can you tell us what the state of our DCs are in terms of the social housing portion of that? Do we have a sense of how much money we have left there?
Through the chair, just a point of clarification to the councillor. Overall, of all our projects, or between a specific project you're asking about?
No, just the general, how much we have.
And maybe our treasurer, I see Mr. Civic, if you could maybe comment on the development charge reserve.
Probably in the negative.
Thank you. Through the chair, the balance is in a negative balance for the social housing component of the DCs, approximately $25 million at this point.
Good with that?
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're all in that negative zone. So, good question, though. Thank you very much. Further comments or questions on 6.1? Do you want to put your amendment then?
Thank you. And through you, Chair, I have emailed to Clerk Daly, but it would just be to simply include the rapid housing for the raising the roof. And I do have a seconder on that.
So the clerk's going to put it up on the...
Just to the chair, I'm just working with the member about her amendment. Okay. I don't believe she's making that amendment on the floor at this point.
Okay. So I will now read the motion, and then you can make the amendment if you want to make it at that point. You'll be ready to put your amendment on the floor. So I'll read the motion as is, and then you can come back with your amendment. So I need a mover and a seconder first. So I got moved by Councillor Cox, seconded by Councillor McDonald. That item, CCW 2023-030, dated February 14, 2023, Rapid Housing Initiative funding be received, and that staff submit recommended projects to Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, CMHC, for Rapid Housing Initiative 3, RHI 3, funding opportunities that can be applied towards construction of affordable housing units as generally outlined in item CCW 2023-030. And should application-based RHI 3 funding be approved by CMHC, approximately $1,016,000 or $169.33 per dwelling be approved from social housing reserve to rehabilitate 5 to 6 existing units created under the Urban Native Housing Program, and that Simcoe County recommends the Simcoe County Housing Corporation that should additional funds be required, that in the year of 2023 capital surplus be drawn upon to rehabilitate 5 to 6 existing units created under the Urban Native Housing Program, in addition to utilizing RH3 funding to create secondary suites in these existing units. So I have my mover and a seconder, right? Now I'll ask Deputy Warden Coggin to put your amendment.
Thank you, and through you, your chair. I have an amendment, seconded by Councillor Hamlin, that should application-based RH13 funding approved by CMHC, that the request from Raising the Roof be approved from Social Housing Reserve. And I will look to Clerk Daly.
So he has a copy of this amendment right now because some people didn't hear it. Yeah. So we'll wait and see if he can put it on the board. Yeah, I don't know. While we're waiting, all the projects are great. It's a tough one for all of the county, you know, to deal with all these projects, but they all, it's like Councillor Scott said, I think it's, you know, we're all in desperate need of social housing, and it's always great when we can dip into some federal funding when it comes from other communities to help us out. So we do appreciate their effort. And if I had a joke, I'd give you one, but I don't have a joke, so. The technical issue, that's good. Once we get the changes to the hall, though, we won't have those technical glitches anymore. We do have a question in the back by Councillor Wilma.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to General Manager Fayez Baguette. With regards to the project funding, again going back to the concerns over our piece of the pie, if you will, is there a way for this council or staff to identify any kind of prioritization system when submitting our applications, hoping that we don't get one over the other, that kind of thing, just from yeah, thank you.
General Manager.
Through you, Chair. Thank you for the question, Councillor. Yes, the idea would be that when we create our requests for proposals, there would be like we would share with everyone the scoring system, the qualifications and criteria for the applications, and then again, the idea is to create an objective tool that meets the system's needs. And I want to emphasize that as System Service Manager, we're legislatively obligated to address the holistic system, which in this case would be the county as a whole. And if we are also receiving federal and provincial funding for an array of different services within homelessness and housing, that requires to do things like end chronic homelessness by or reduce it by 50%. So these factors have to be a part of how we propose to create affordable housing. So certainly we would share that, and we'd do some, you know, town halls and some broader engagement on providing a clear understanding of what we're looking for and what we're prioritizing and our criteria of our priorities as well.
Okay, good. So we now have, okay, so we have the amendment. I'm just going to read it and then we will, then I'll offer back to you. So the amendment is that that should the Raising the Roof application-based RHI3 funding be approved by CMHC, that the request from Raising the Roof from Social Housing Reserve with appropriate financial and operational safeguards as deemed appropriate by legal services. I turn the floor to you, Deputy Warden, to comment.
I was actually just going to, through you, thank Clerk Daly, because mine said, and anything CYA required. So his was much better worded. So I appreciate that.
Okay, so.
And to the chair, I'm just going to add on be approved at the end of that.
Be approved, okay. Add on to the end of it. Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder with amendment on the floor, and I've read the amendment. So the next question, comments or questions? Warden.
Thank you. I guess through the staff, what kind of safeguards could we put in place? Because the reality is, if the funding isn't there in 10 years, we're going to end up making that up. We're the housing supplier. We will have to make up that shortfall, will we not?
Through the chair, through you, the chair. And thank you, Warden, for the question. Yes, that's correct. The social housing reserve right now, and I think staff can speak to it in greater detail if necessary, is already pre-prescribed to some of our future build projects and some of our other already planned work, and it's been reduced and dwindling through time. And our contributions to it are happening, but not at the same rate as use. So my concern would be that the source of where we would fund may not have the adequate amount for the current request, and thereafter, safeguards for future subsidy and operating costs beyond 11 or the 21-year mark would also be something that would be hard to safeguard against.
Yeah, great question, Warren, because I struggled with this amendment because it doesn't really make sense to me. We're looking. I'm assuming you're asking us to fund any overruns, or I'm just not. Can you explain the amendment to me? Yep.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Chair. The intention of this is for the county to move forward with this project that we've spent quite a bit of time on today. I do understand that there will be questions in 10 years, and I absolutely agree that putting a long-term plan in place and getting that in front of this floor. I disagree with waiting a year to come up with a policy to then determine how we would fund initiatives like this. I think that we know that there is a need, and there is a rapid need, and there's an immediate need, and that's why there's a federal funding opportunity. I guess I'm taking a simple approach whereby $200,000 over 10, 11 years, we're taking $2 million and potentially getting up to 13. So I understand that there is a risk involved, but I also think there's a greater risk in not taking this opportunity today to move forward with this. So I've heard from the back that we are calling the vote, and I will call the vote.
Okay. All right. She's asked to call the vote. Excellent. Okay. So we've asked for a call. No, I've got one more question from Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you. I think the issue that...
Point of order, okay.
I believe that the councillor is asked to call the vote. I don't believe there's any further discussion on the topic.
Okay, you have to call point of order to call for the vote, right? You just can't yell out call for the vote. That doesn't you have to call point of order, call for the vote. Because she was a seconder, I was going to give her a chance, but actually the mover actually said call for the vote. She called for the vote then, so you're right. I will go directly to the vote. So we've had our discussion on this, so I will call for the vote. All in favor as amended. Who's counting? Okay. All opposed? To 20? 10 to 21? So it was 10 to 21, so it was not supported. The amendment was not supported. So we'll now go back to the original motion as read. So I have a mover and a second for the original motion. I have Councillor Cox and Councillor McDonald for the original motion as read. I don't think I have to read it again. Barry Mayor Nuttall.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to follow up on my colleague, Councillor Rittman's question there with regards to the social housing reserve. You know, the social housing reserve has nothing to do with operating costs. So if down the road, 10 years down the road, there was an operating issue, I don't believe it would qualify to even use the social housing reserve to support that. So what would be talked about with regards to this would actually just be a tax base related piece. And so I think that's, I didn't get to say that before, but I think that's really important. The second piece of that is, I just want to confirm, is it negative 25 or 23 million that was in the
Negative 25 million.
Negative 25 million. And as of Bill 23 being brought into, the regs being completely passed, social housing will no longer be able to be collected on for development charges. So I guess the question is, what's the point of having a development charge social housing reserve that's sitting minus 25 million? My second question would be, where are the dollars going to come from to make that $25 million whole? And my third question would be, have we changed all of the financials related to all of the different projects, the $200 million of investment on social housing, to reflect the fact that we're not only minus 25 million, but we're not collecting another dollar essentially on it?
I think I'll refer those questions to our treasurer, Leland.
Through the chair, yes, the negative 25 million due to Bill 23 is no longer available through the social housing development charge. We can't collect on the funds, nor can we. The service is ineligible at this point in time. As we get more information regarding Bill 23 and how this piece specifically, the negative 25, is going to be funded, we will bring that back to council.
Good. Follow-up?
Yes, please, Mr. Chair. So is the negative 25, is that committed, or is that the actual balance of the account today?
The negative 20, through the chair, the negative 25 is already committed and spent from previous housing projects.
So it doesn't include anything for what's being currently built or built over the next 3 years?
No, that's correct. The future total development charge for social housing over a 10-year period is approximately $97 million. That was in the development charge study. That's the county portion.
So the county portion would be 97 million that would be collected for social housing over a decade, did you say?
Correct.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair, that's a massive hole. And if I was going to have a conversation about social housing, and just so everyone realizes, I am a massive supporter of social housing. I grew up in social housing. My deputy mayor grew up in social housing. We have 4 members of council who lived in social housing. I would venture to say that it works based on seeing all my friends growing up with. But we have a huge nut to crack here at the county when it comes to a $200 million piece, because the city of Barrie, we're responsible for 25% of that. We're at negative $3 million in our development charge reserve for social housing today. We're not going to collect another dollar, but we do have a $50 million bill over the next 3 to 5 years to fill out of that $200 million. And I think there's a whole bunch of question marks there with regards to how that's going to happen and where those dollars are going to come from going forward.
And I appreciate your comments, because I think that's where we have to hold Minister Clark accountable with his comments being that he was going to make everybody whole. Because we have, we have a housing shortage here. We have a social housing program that is not funded right now, and we're looking at some very significant costs. I think we had a report come from our CAO or from our general managers about social housing, and it was a quite financial impact to the county. So certainly we're all going to fight about Bill 23 and make sure that we get to our provincial government and let them know where we sit. And I know I'm fighting with the Small GTH Mayors Association about talking to Minister Clark, and we've sent letters down. I'm sure we all have sent letters down to Minister Clark, and hopefully he's paying attention, and we need to be made whole in this area. So thank you for your comments. So further comments or questions on this? Yes, Councillor Hamlin.
One of my overriding, issues that's percolating right now is, if not us, who? Right? Who's going to fund the operating for these social housing projects? The feds are giving the capital projects. Who's going to fund the operating? And I'm wondering if, and this is a question through you, Mr. Chair, to staff, will we be having a report come forward at some time that will outline recommendations on how much this county should be putting forward to operating costs for these projects?
I turn that to General Manager.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the answer is yes. We will be bringing forward a comprehensive report that lays out our 10-year strategy, which will include in it how does the county's responsibility of service manager not only maintain affordability and maintain its service level by legislation, but also increase that service level. And additionally, in that report, it will talk about how do we partner with similar agencies and organizations in their endeavor to develop, and how do we make those projects sustainable on the affordability side of it, which is the subsidized rent, quite frankly. So those are absolutely, there will be a report coming forward that it walks us through our next 10 years. It will set some targets and goals and share what we've accomplished in the last 10 years, which is actually incredible, well over our targeted amounts. So I think we know we can do it. Certainly there's been a lot of assistance of both orders of government, but as well as mostly municipal investments have gone into that success. So.
Just one follow-up, and will the report also address an issue I feel this House has been concerned about? What about past 10 years? Because to me, every project's going to have a window for operating forever, let's assume, or 50 years, or it's some target. So if we're all worried about what's going to happen in 10 years or 20 years, nothing will ever get funded to be operated. So will your report also address that?
Through the chair, yes. As I said, our responsibility is to maintaining our service level, which means everything we've created to this point, and then also how do we increase beyond that level to address the growing needs based on population growth and demographic needs. So yes.
Thank you.
So we've had great discussion on 6.1, and I think I'll call the vote now. So we have a mover to seconder on the motion that's on the floor. So all in favor? Carried. Thank you. We'll move on to Human Services, Community Services. And the recommendation, I just asked for any comments or concerns with this recommendation. It Starts as a great program. The county's been involved for a few years now, I think 7 years. Seeing no comments or questions, can I ask mover by Councillor Broderick, our alternate Councillor Broderick, and alternate Councillor Scott, so I can get them on the agenda so they can validate their pay. Is that okay? Moved by and seconded by. Thank you very much. And the motion reads that item CCW 2023-012 dated February 14, 2023 regarding the Simcoe County Local Immigration Partnerships LIP 2023 Public Education Campaign to Reduce Racism and Discrimination, #ItStarts, be received, and that member municipalities be encouraged to participate in the #ItStarts campaign between March 1st and 31st, 2023, including a municipal proclamation supporting the initiative and recognizing March 21st, 2023 as the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination.
We do have that presentation.
Oh, sorry, we do have a presentation. Thank you. I apologize. I got ahead of the game and I didn't get the presentation in, so thanks, John. We'll do the presentation and then we'll call for the vote on this. Sorry.
Through you, Chair Leduc, Your Worship, County Councillors, elected officials from the City of Barrie and Aurelia. I'm really pleased today to be able to share some of the details about this year's It Starts campaign. I just wanted to give you a bit of background about the campaign. Oh, I hear that people, sorry. Bit of background about the Local Immigration Partnership and our role in the It Starts campaign. The Simcoe County Local Immigration Partnership was established in 2011. It is one of 34 local immigration partnerships across Ontario, and there are almost 90 LIPs across Canada. We are engaged in what's called indirect settlement work. And so we don't work directly with clients. There are agencies in the community that do that, but we work across the community to help them to understand our changing demographics, share information and resources, and we also work with the funded settlement partners to coordinate services and identify gaps. This work is funded in part by Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada. Just a bit about the campaign history. This is the 7th year. It was a recommendation in the Community Settlement Strategy that was published in 2012 to develop a public education campaign to reduce racism and discrimination and encourage cultural competency. And it takes place in public spaces and on social media platforms. It was developed by community partners and launched in 2017. And now it takes place annually during the month of March. And in 2021, it was recognized as a promising best practice nationally by Pathways to Prosperity. The campaign really rests, the structure of the campaign rests on two different structures. One are community champions, and community champions are organizations in our communities who agree to do the planning for the event annually, who agree to take on 1 week of the month of March, and who recruit campaign ambassadors. And during that 1 week, they might be hosting events in their public spaces or posting social media messages. Then separately, and this is a real gem of the campaign, are the ambassadors. Last year we had 100 ambassadors attend information sessions. Those are individuals who want to share messages of equity, diversity, and inclusion in their communities of practice. They attend a 2-hour information session that is co-facilitated by the Simcoe County District School Board. It is their teachers from their Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Department who develop the materials and share that information. They join the Simcoe County Diversity Hub to access resources and information, and they develop a plan to share messages across the month of March. This year, we have had planned to deliver 12 ambassador information sessions. We're offering that in a hybrid fashion, so half of them have been online and half have been back in community spaces. And we also offered a second session, a 2.0 session, so if somebody has been an ambassador in the past and they want to learn and deepen their education and learning, there are 2 of those sessions. We are planning to host an on-live event on March the 21st. We're doing that in partnership with 2 other local immigration partnerships, the one from Grey Bruce and the one from Lanark Renfrew, and that will be hosted online, and we will be sharing that information out through our communications department, Service Simcoe, as those links become available. And of course, we encourage people to join the Simcoe County Diversity Hub to access resources. These are our community champions for the 2023 campaign. We're very pleased once again that we have Making Change, who is a local agency addressing education and awareness around anti-Black racism, as our chair for the planning table this year. And one of the things we're always trying to do is to measure the impact of the campaign. We measure things like how many people came to sessions, how many participated in the campaign. But we also measure the metrics on social media. And so you can see the growth of the campaign online over the course of the campaign. And you can also see that people are becoming more engaged, wanting to learn more through that engagement number. We can see the decrease in negative sentiment as well, which we've only been able to measure in the last 3 years. And then before, the last thing I wanted to leave you with, and really, the importance of this campaign, is our communities are growing. We now have 2021 census data that shows us the growth in diversity in our communities. The immigrant population, which is the primary focus of the local immigration partnership, that population increased by 33.6% in 5 years from the 2016 census. The growth in people reporting a non-official mother tongue grew by 40.5% in that same period. And the growth in people reporting a racialized background grew by 92%. And so this speaks to the importance of the campaign. Our communities are changing. We want to support new residents coming to Simcoe County. So we ask you to get involved, issue a proclamation, recruit campaign ambassadors from municipalities, join the Simcoe County Diversity Hub, share social media messages, promote the event on March 21st. We just recently learned that Service Simcoe has purchased some flags, so there's an opportunity to do a flag raising at your municipal administration centers. We have staff out in the foyer. If you came in that way, you probably saw them on your way in, but if you came in the other entrance, you might not have seen them. They're set up to share information and resources. There will be staff there to take photos as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. And I want to apologize to council. I have my script and I should be reading it when I'm doing things. I got there and I flipped it over. So I truly apologize because the general manager was supposed to introduce Sandra. So I apologize if somebody doesn't know her, but Sandra, thank you very much for your presentation. I didn't mean to minimize this at all. It Starts is a really important campaign, and I look forward to sharing some photos out there in the front foyer and potentially doing a flag raising. We're pro flag raising in Bradford. So, anyways, I do have a mover and a second for this. Any questions for Sandra in regards? Councillor Foss.
Thanks. Through the chair, just a couple of quick comments to mention to staff. And one was thanks very much for this program. It's looking very successful. And I know as an Orillia councillor, we've been indirectly involved with it the last couple of years. So it's great to see. I know in talking with some Orillia colleagues, we'd love to put something together formally. So if it's possible, maybe if you're able to reach out to myself and some of the Orillia councillors to put together a motion, that would be really wonderful for the Orillia Council. The other thing I did want to mention as well from the Orillia context is we've just put together, we're in the process of developing an equity and diversity roundtable for our city, and I know many of the individuals that are involved with it, and it does kind of sound like the type of project they'd be very interested in committing to and championing. So if there's an opportunity there, please let us know in terms of on the Orillia side of things, if we can be helpful in any way. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Excellent. Yeah, Sandra?
Thank you. Through you, Chair Leduc. Yes, we're happy to come out and do a presentation if needed, work individually with people to get resources set up. I think we've got that email there, sklip@simcoe.ca. That comes directly to staff who, that's probably the most expeditious way to get things rolling. But we're happy to do that, and we're happy to share as many resources as we can with our municipalities.
Excellent. Any further comments or questions for Sandra? All right, Sandra, thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. I will certainly follow my agenda. Moving on to 7.2, homeless prevention funding. I will ask for any comments or questions in regards to this item. Councillor Follis.
Thanks. Through the chair, two things. One, just a reminder to clerks, if it's possible at the end, to separate for me to declare conflict. But the second thing was I was going to ask about funding for Orillia as it pertains to, I believe there was a breakdown of Barrie, Orillia, and Midland funding. And it was identified that it was 70,000 going to Orillia, 70,000 going to Barrie, or sorry, 70,000 going to Midland, and then 180,000 going to Orillia. I'm just trying to find the breakdown here, but I was curious why Orillia's stream isn't more significant, given that Midland's half our size. Not to say that the money isn't warranted to Midland or anything like that, just more. Do we require more for Orillia to offset some of the costs that we're incurring for having servicing a bigger population? Thanks.
Question,
through you,
General Manager?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question, Councillor. I'll have to refer to staff on that question specifically.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mr. Chair. The information that we use to collect, to guide us with the allocations per region is not just the point-in-time enumeration count, but we also use HIFIS, which is our information system, which gives us real-time data to determine the numbers being served in each of the regions. We also have information that comes in around outreach data, and the allocations are based on the needs in the community, enumeration, HIFIS, and a number of other factors. So I just wanted to clarify the question around the dollars. Were you taking the cumulative amounts per region? Is that what you were comparing?
Through the chair, it's in reference to the region-wide outreach programs.
Oh, okay.
If someone could fill me in, because there's a breakdown: Barrie 170,000, Midland Outreach 70,000, then Orillia 70,000.
Okay. Thank you for that. Sorry, I didn't hear the outreach piece. So you will notice that there is going to be further discussion in the Orillia area around the outreach services. That will take place soon after ratification. The outreach services are also an area. We conducted a homelessness system review, and it's by April 11, the report will come to council. In that, there is a recommendation to review different sectors of our funding, outreach being one of them, so that it can help inform and guide our decisions for upcoming funding. And certainly we would continue to monitor that through the year as well.
Okay, yep, follow up.
And so I guess this is more to staff then. Do we, if we put forward this report right now without making any changes, can we expect this to be addressed for this year, or would we be anticipating addressing this in future years?
So the report that comes in April will in fact guide future work. This year we did look at realignment of funding, so the allocations here are based on a number of factors. I'm happy to share those, but you're speaking specifically to the outreach program. So with that, we did look at data, numbers that come in from our shelter providers, the enumeration to make the decision on the allocations, recognizing that there is more assessment being done in the area of outreach needs, because that's a critical piece, especially since the 3 years, the peak of the pandemic. The services that are required through outreach are significant, and we will continue to monitor. But for this year, the allocations are proportionate to the data that we have.
Thank you. Further supplementary? Seeing none, okay. Any further comments or questions in regards to 7.1? And I know you've got a declaration of pecuniary interest on this issue, so we've broken it into two sectors. I will have a new recommendation on the floor when it comes. Comments? You had another question, Councillor Follis, or?
Thanks, through the chair. I can't really comprehend how the numbers are very close together with the different sizes of municipalities, and we do have a pretty sizable shelter in Orillia, and some other significant shelter, not necessarily emergency shelters, but some other shelters as well. Could you speak to why this is, what is the reason that Midland is identical to Orillia? Thanks.
Yep. Oh, who wants? General Manager?
Chair. Thank you for the question, Councillor. I'll just maybe give a broader kind of explanation. The way we allocate funding currently is based on the data we have currently. So we have nightly data, we have the point-in-time data, and then we also have like arising needs by cases. So between those things, we factor what we can allocate as a budget for this year. However, this year's budget, we are holding back to address needs as they arise in year. We are conducting that review that staff had shared, with a report coming on our recommendations on how do we fund the system as a whole across the board, specifically focused on areas like outreach, and taking new approaches to outreach that might be a little bit more mobile responsive and less space-based. So more for that is coming in that report. But currently speaking, we are going to review the allocations presented for us. And if there is data that indicates a different level of need, we'll certainly engage and review that together.
Okay.
Through the chair, I will drop it for right now, but I really would encourage staff to review that, because that does strike me as something, there seems to be a bit of imbalance there, and I really think that needs to be reviewed. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Norcross.
Thank you. So the member for Aurelia, he can directly reach out to our departments, right? Like, you have the emails, you're good, you can communicate, you can have those discussions offline here? So
through the chair, yeah.
Yep.
Yes, we would connect directly, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further comments or questions on this report? Councillor Corbell.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to General Manager Fayez Baguette. When it comes to the data that's being captured for defining where the dollars for the homeless will be spent, I know that in our particular municipality, I'm just wondering where the data comes from. We have homeless folks living in Elmvale and some of our other smaller communities, and I expect that there's other small communities within Simcoe County that are experiencing the same situation. So when we're talking about the data, how is the data captured in the outlying areas that would effectively provide some form of homelessness outreach to them as well? Thank you.
General Manager.
Through you, the chair, thank you for the question, Councillor. The data is collected in different ways. Primarily, all funded agencies and organizations participate in a centralized database information management system. The acronym is HIFIS. It stands for Homeless Families and Individuals Information Homelessness Information System. I think I got that right. So this is daily, nightly data that's inputted after 2 a.m. after the final bed count on intake. So we get that data on a nightly basis, and it shares to us where the inflow is. Additionally, outreach teams also count and tabulate how many engagements and interactions they've had with people experiencing homelessness, and that's also entered in. Furthermore, we do, by requirement, by federal requirement, we do a point-in-time count, a full enumeration countywide every other year for those who self-identify. And this is where we go out and try to reach those hard to reach, as well as those experiencing homelessness in our shelters or couch surfing and others, to kind of get a better idea of what is our homeless population count. And then thirdly, we receive data through anecdotal incidents and through other systems, including like hospital discharge, judicial discharge, and other outside provincial and federal systems. So between the three, that's how we quantify based on what we believe is the level of service needed. And we rely, of course, on our partners and agencies who have their feet on the ground to give us that anecdotal data as well.
Follow on, please.
What's that?
Just in respect of that, I think the folks that I guess I'm referring to are the ones that, for lack of a better term, are non-identifiable. They would basically have to identify themselves or come in contact with police or some other form of interaction to come to the attention and be captured as data. I'm just wondering, and I'm also quite hopeful that going forward there might be some other mechanism or some other form of capturing these particular individuals that are out there, and they're not being counted at the end of the night. They're not going into some of these social avenues, let's say, where they can be enumerated at the end of an evening or been in contact with them and be counted. So I don't know what the answer would be, but I certainly hope that going forward that might be something that could be considered. Thank you.
General Manager.
Through the chair, part of that overall comprehensive review looked at best practices, not only within the county but across, Ontario and Canada and other nations on how they are able to predictively capture where their homeless population's trends are kind of analyzed. So we will be sharing some of those other best practices that are outside of the things that we're currently doing now as well.
All right, thank you. Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, in our
estimates on what we're going to have to spend to manage the homeless population, which is a significant and growing cost, clearly. I'm wondering what impact we've projected that the Adams ruling from the Waterloo Kitchener area is going to have an impact on us, as that effectively precludes any municipality's ability to move people off of municipal land that have chosen to camp there because they have nowhere else to live. So without getting into the whole heartless side of this argument and where do they go, this ruling, if I've understood it correctly, basically prohibits all of our municipalities from moving encamped folks off of our land, and wondering if there's any funds set aside to, or if it's even a worthy cause to challenge that ruling. I haven't heard anything from the AMO yet, which has really shocked me that we haven't seen anything come through the wire, or perhaps I missed it, because this has material impact on all our municipalities. So I'm just wondering if that plays into this at all, or if there's an upcoming report on what the county's response is, if any, to this new ruling that's now impacting us in Ontario.
General Manager, any comments?
Through the chair, thank you for the question, Councillor. Yes, so the ruling, to clarify, was based on the notion that if there's an available space in shelter to be offered that matches the client that's in currently in encampment or choosing not to enter. So I think what the ruling found was that there wasn't appropriate matching space to the client's needs. So similarly, I think it goes back to the data question. What I interpreted from that ruling is that service managers' data has to be incredibly sound to show that their current space availability matches the needs of those we offer an opportunity to come inside or leave their encampment. So I think our overall homelessness and housing prevention review is definitely going to be focused on those type of approaches to make sure that we're capturing the correct data in order to be confident that our offers are quote unquote from the decision genuine. And then secondly, to your point, I think a broader approach to understanding that impact as a sector and through other municipalities and other sectors is probably something that's going to be explored. And I'm sure we'll be participating in those initiatives as they come up. So, yeah.
Supplementary?
Basically, I think that just reiterates the criticality of making sure data is entered into HIFIS in a timely manner by all of our participating shelters, and that paperwork, you roll your eyes, you don't want to do it 2 o'clock in the morning, is absolutely critical to our budget and decision making and the wraparound services that we're funding. So that's an important takeaway. Thank you.
And I think, General Manager, you're going to comment, or?
I was just going to say yes, we agree. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I think all of us have seen a larger uptick in homelessness throughout our communities. I mean, we're 18 members here. We're 16 members in 2 separate cities, but we try to disperse that funding, and it's all based on data. And that's where we have to make decisions based on data, and so we'll work towards data. And I think I ask you all to make sure that your agencies report back into these systems and make sure that we get the proper data so that we can disperse the funding correctly, so that we deal with homelessness throughout the county. So it's a tough one, but things are moving forward. So I'm going to read. You have another comment?
If it's possible, through the chair, I just wanted to kind of make a broad statement, if possible. One thing I really wanted to highlight is the ultimate way to prevent homelessness is affordable housing and trying to stop it before, it becomes a chronic problem. And so that is where we can make a big difference before we even get to this point, is if we invest in affordable housing, it reduces this type of thing, the need for this type of service, these types of services that much more. They're still required, but can really alleviate a lot of those challenges. The other thing as well, just to mention, we have supported emergency shelters in the past in the previous budget meeting, and that can also be a big way of addressing some of the challenges around encampments and those issues as well. So just wanted to put that out there, that sometimes proactive investment can avoid these types of challenges down the road. Thanks.
We do our best. We'll certainly do our best when it comes to proactive investment, for sure. So I will read, it's been broken into 2 motions so that Councillor Follis can participate in the first one. So under item 7.2, Committee whole, or so that item, CCW 2023-007, dated February 14, 2023, regarding homeless prevention funding allocation be received, and except for Couchiching, Jubilee House, and Redwood Park communities, that the proposed allocations for the 2023-2024 federal Reaching Home funding, provincial homeless prevention program funding, and municipal homeless prevention funding, as outlined in Schedules 1 and 2, respectively, to item CCW 2023-007 be approved, and that the necessary bylaw be presented to authorize the general manager, social and community services, or a director from social and community services in his or her absence, and the county clerk to enter into agreements with related community services. So that is excluding the Couchiching and the Redwood Park, so that Councillor Fallis can participate in this vote. So we're including everybody but those two units right now. So I'll call, I do have a mover and seconder, correct? No, so I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Bell, seconded by Councillor Evans. All in favor? Excellent. So now I'll ask Councillor Fallis to step away, and we'll read the second one. That the proposed allocation for 2023-2024 federal Reaching Home funding, provincial homeless prevention program funding, and municipal homeless prevention funding, Couchiching, Jubilee House, and Redwood Park communities, as outlined in Schedule 1 and 2, respectively, to item CCW 2023-007 be approved, that the necessary bylaw be presented to authorize the general manager, social and community services, or a director from social and community services in his or her absence, and the county clerk to enter into agreements with related community services. Do I need a mover? Okay, moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by, I'll take another one, Councillor Smith. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Moving on. Trying to stay with my agenda. Okay, so I have Section 8, Human Services Long-Term Care Commitment of Management. So I have 8.1. Don't have a presentation for this, so any questions or concerns with this report? Seeing none, so I need a mover and seconder, please. Moved by Barry Mayor Nuttall, seconded by Councillor Lage? Locks. Okay. Okay, I will read the motion. So that item CCW 2023-058, dated February 14, 2023, regarding the 2022-23 Ontario Renal Network Operating Funding Agreement for Simcoe Manor be received. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Matters of other consideration? Nothing. So I'll return back to the warden.
Thank you, and I apologize. I probably should have taken a break after the presentations, but we're in the home stretch, folks, so I'd like to just keep pushing through if I'm getting the nods. So we have corporate services, other matters for consideration, and there was none presented to me today, so then I will turn the chair over to Chairman Cox for performance management.
Good morning. Let's see. Performance management, procurement, fleet, and property. Item 11.1, Enbridge franchise agreement. Any comments? Questions? Seeing none, can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Fowler, second by Councillor Evans. All in favor? Carried. Performance management, other matters of consideration. The Audit Finance Committee report. Recommendation. I think I'm going to ask for our chair, Councillor Norris, to move, and our vice chair, Councillor Fryer, to second it, please. Is that okay?
Thank you, Chair Cox. The recommendation, I'll move it, that the recommendations contained within the Audit and Finance Committee report dated February 7, 2023 be approved.
And we have a second. Yes, go ahead. Yes, I have a mover and I have a seconder, Mr. Councillor Fryer. Okay?
No comment.
Oh, all in favor. Go. All in favor. Sorry, I wasn't going fast enough.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, the only thing I'm going to point out, just so everybody's aware, for environmental sustainability, we will no longer be printing the budgets. They will be sent out online unless a councillor would like a printed copy, and then, of course, you can make arrangements to have that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Thank you. Closed session, we have none, so I would look for a mover to adjourn. Moved by Councillor McDonald, second by Councillor Greenlaw. All in favor? That is carried. Next meeting, February 28th, unless you're on economic development, and our next meeting is in about 10 minutes, correct?